What else are you planning now, Father? I heard you exterminated about 30% of all the Chaos Marines in the galaxy. Maybe more. Janice asked as I was lining the entire super dreadnought with blackstone armor, 40 meters thick. Perhaps a bit too little, considering how the Imperium was using these behemoths as siege breakers. Claritas, the machine spirit of the ship, didn't mind at all, and subtly requested I reinforce a few power conduits and its own cogitator core with extra armor. I was also thinking what to do. Most likely, fix up things back home, then go out hunting Tyranid hive fleets. I answered as the new cogitator core got covered in a meter of auramite and blackstone. Sounds dangerous. I had to save your ass back at Forge Griffon, Janice said in a wary voice. That was mostly the extra chaos invasion. I was dealing just fine with the silly bugs. I muttered a bit unconvincingly. Janice sighed and patted my arm. You have crafted a legend for yourself, Father. The man who can defeat anything. Even the Emperor believes it. But, Custodes Niles here can beat you up with a single hand. My daughter answered with a nod towards the golden Custodes keeping watch on the bridge. I picked a single rose from my dimensional pocket and placed it in the man's mouth before he could speak. I hear you like taking space walks. Come with me, I urged Janice and stepped beside her on the nearest moon. Canis had left a path of wolf paws on the silver sand. Janice covered herself in a telekina field, and glanced at me a bit curious. So I began building. Adamantium frames, auramite ingots, blackstone plates, then more metals and minerals as needed to construct a warlord titan. But a little taller. Even when following the exact template and measurements, scaling the thing to become 400 times larger was very difficult. And then I had to add anti-grav plates and extra reactors to power them, an entire command bridge and Ares engines for space flight. Technically, the internal volume was large enough now that I could add warp engines or even Macarius engines, but sub-light speeds would suffice for this first test. Instead I went with more armor, even more shields and reactors and extra cogitator cores. A network of 400 such cogitators will allow even a single person to pilot the new Giga Titan, although it would lose 90% of its effectiveness in a real combat. Much the same as piloting a 12 km Emperor-class battleship. Only mine had legs. One arm held a 5-barrel Godsbane Lance battery, and the other a battleship-scale plasma annihilator gun. A dozen secondary batteries of volcano cannons should take care of the small fries, while the shoulder-mounted volcano lance batteries will take care of anti-air defense. In just 3.14 minutes, I left out a big breath and turned off the breath of gods. I present to you, your wedding gift. A Lancefire J-pattern Titan. I spoke as we moved right inside the bridge. The head of the Titan towered above the moon's surface from 10 kilometers high, giving us an amazing view of the short horizon. I always imagined Titans stepping over mountains, but now they could. Daddy, you shouldn't have. But really, for me? Janice yelled as she ran around the bridge, then jumped into the command throne. Omnissiah's Judgment Titan is ready for action. Reactors charging, now at 3%. Current operational range, 93 billion kilometers, or 30 years in light combat action. The Titanic machine spirit spoke from a tiny hologram depicting the same Titan as a blue and green model. Janice turned the giant walker around and scanned for a target. A fragment of a Chaos battleship was the closest, so she fired the Lance battery in quick succession, burning off half the cursed adamantium armor and splitting the rest into 5 smaller fragments. I can fight even a battleship with the Judgment, Janice yelled in a joyous voice. It is meant to fight ground targets though, but sure. Go for a walk with it, I urged my daughter with a kind voice. To see your child take their first steps was a joy for any father. You might be worried that my large Titan would sink into the soft ground of the moon, but the anti-grav plates worked perfectly as Janice took off at a slow walk, and then accelerated up to 27% light speed for a cruise around the riser system. We stopped an hour later right in front of the Claritas, who was still almost 4 times larger. I'm not sure how to haul this big thing around though. Some kind of underslung clamps? Janice mused rather cogently. It was a bad idea though. Clamps could be damaged or break. I drew another big breath, and added a large adamantium hanger under the dreadnought, where the Titan could rest and be carried like a gondola under a zeppelin. It could also serve as a service bay, so why not? The Claritas machine spirit grumbled on my implant about extra volume and more difficult maneuvers, but I ignored it. With the new upgrades I gave the big dreadnought, Claritas could deal with a marsupial pouch holding a baby Titan. While Janice ran off to show Canis and Purity her new toy, I met with Rose again. You're lucky the Mars ships have already departed with the tithe, or they would have asked for another God Walker for the forge. She warned me with a tired headshake. That wasn't luck. I just waited for them to leave. Janice liked her wedding gift though. I answered in a light voice. Rose climbed on top of me, and hugged me to her chest. Your strange powers are still growing then? You have outmatched the Primarchs long ago. Tell the Emperor he can bring his palace to salvation when he leaves. It's either there or Nocturne, but we have less Vulcans back home, I whispered instead, while playing with her death and duty-famous mountains. If I didn't know your mother so well, I would have suspected you're as old as the Emperor. Not even his custodes dare to speak like that, Rose sighed as her eyes became a few degrees colder. About that. I arranged for Justine to get reborn. Ened owes me a favor, so I chose my mother for it. So don't shoot her if she appears in the Imperial Palace one day. Sister Stern as well, but she got the resurrection gift covered by the God Emperor. The other one inside the Astronomicon, I mean. I added while tapping the Imperial Aquila hanging at my neck. Rose stared for a minute at the double-headed eagle, before nodding gently. One body and two heads. To think the truth stared me in the face my entire life, and I never realized what the heads meant. Belief has a way of making things become true, even if they seem impossible. Oh well, at least I found the fix for the Golden Throne, so it won't explode anymore. And no, it wasn't my fault this time. Damn thing was built with a failsafe, just in case it ever stopped working. I explained in a careless voice, and committed a few capital heresies at the same time. Rose placed a finger on my lips, to stop me from talking. Sealed, under my authority. Never speak of this again, unless the Emperor himself asks. Rose growled as her index finger looked exactly like the Inquisition's seal. I kissed her finger in return. Sealed with a kiss. I finally found what the words meant. Next day, my pretty Inquisitor wife took me to visit her mailed fist. As in the Ordo Malleus's Grey Knights. Not my favorite bunch, but they fought the good fight, most of the time. And killed everyone who saw them after, especially their allies. So, mixed review there. I didn't recognize any of them, but instead I found the entire bridge crew of their strike cruiser were blanks. Exactly the ones raised and educated in the Blank Valley back home, which I sent to the Emperor some time ago. All males, of course. The girls were most likely already turned into silent sisters. Lord Lancefire. You seem well. A bit taller maybe? The ship's captain addressed me in a polite tone. Also a blank, of course. With the demonic shit the Grey Knights dealt with, normal people would need too many mind wipes to function at any decent capacity. Rufus Jürgen, right. I know your father. I answered after checking my implant. His father was also a breeding stallion for the blank race, and one I confiscated from a certain famous commissar. This way, Chapter Master Lancefire. Our prognosticar needs to see you. An Aegis armor-wearing space marine demanded a bit too fast. This better not be some kind of dick measuring contest between chapters. I have the best dick anyways. I muttered in a low voice, making Rose slap my head with an annoyed glare. It was true though. Space Marines didn't reproduce by impregnating women. They usually found young boys and... Anyways. I was the exception to the rule. My dick worked just fine. The Grey Knight's prognosticar was a giant. Not only a Primaris Marine, but obviously enhanced by the Emperor in other ways. Probably an Alpha Psyker too. He just nodded towards Rose, as if she wasn't the boss of the Inquisition. Pef Lancefire, you're a very difficult man to find, despite leaving a trail of destruction and ruin in your path. Your fate is masked, even from me. The prognosticar spoke in a deep voice, while leaning on his metal throne to observe me with glowing eyes. The perks of being a blank. Quite a blessing, I admit. I answered in a casual voice, and constructed a similar metal throne to sit in, since nobody brought me a chair. Rose sighed and sat in midair on a magic couch, then leaned back to admire her pink nails. Boys, behave both of you. She spoke in a soft voice. Our hold is full with damaged armors and dreadknights, plus thousands of broken weapons and artifacts. We arrived at Hell's Teeth too late, and could only cover the Mechonicus forces as they retreated from the Maelstrom, with 95% casualties. The prognosticar continued in a flat voice, but sounding quite aggrieved to my ears. I raised a finger to think. These guys would have been quite useful in the Maelstrom, since all of them were beta-level psychers, and a few even alpha among their champions and prognosticers. But they also got their asses kicked by chaos and had to retreat. They might have stumbled into a trap meant for me. Did you see a saintly sister blowing up demons all over? I asked instead. Maybe Ephrael didn't die? The demonifuge, yes. She fell in battle against 66 great demons. Killed half of them before she died. The Grey Knight said with a glow in his eyes. Really, 66 of the ugly ones? Not a coincidence then. I could deal with 4 or 5, maybe 6 at once, if my luck held. Add 60 more, and things would get bad. I was amazed these guys escaped at all. The arch-traitor was there too, Araman. He killed the Grey Knight's champion. With 2 strikes. Rose added in a colder tone. Well, that made sense as well. I wanted to kill the sorcerer just as much. And sweet Ephrael should be swimming among dead souls on her way back by now. Araman is the most powerful psyker Chaos has left. And the bird would buff him up with dark blessings as well, to make sure he doesn't die. I guess you want to kill the guy now? I asked at random. Almost at random. I did listen so far. The Grey Knights present glanced at each other. That would be ideal, Pef Lancefire. And having our gear repaired would also help. The prognosticar spoke for their chapter. My Texorcist skills are only decent. Good enough for a blank, since I ignore most warp stuff by default, but you guys are way more exposed, being psychers and all. I will need to bring in my Forge Masters. Probably my entire crew of Tech Marines as well, if too many things are so damaged, I said with a shrug. Agreed. But only blanks. The Grey Knight replied in a satisfied voice. And I get to keep some stuff for my librarians. Psi-Tech is quite rare and hard to find. I added as my metal throne folded inside the Tesseract and I stood up. Negotiations complete. The Grey Knights glared at me with their blue glowing eyes, but they didn't object. They could find someone else to fix their stuff, probably. I was just cheaper. Tech Marines, bring up your repair skills and tools. Our dear brothers from the Grey Knights chapter need our help to repair and sanctify their gear. Be ready for displacement in a few minutes. I ordered onto implant, while walking casually behind the prognosticar and his remaining brothers. Luckily for them, with the psychic awakening generating billions of psychers, they could find replacements much easier now. And if the Emperor wasn't busy, he could also upgrade their psyker powers with the Shadowlight artifact he obtained from me. An Emperor never steals after all. He already owns everything in the galaxy, legally. And he also wrote those laws, so it was all legal. That's why it was better to live far away from the Imperium. I have to admit, the Grey Knights were not poor at all. They had so many Terminator suits and rare weapons in their hold they almost matched a normal chapter like mine. Which is why I displaced 40,000 blank Tech Marines at once, so they could each take charge of a different item and begin exorcisms and proper repairs. Meanwhile, I inspected each type of artifact and compared them to my Psi-Tech database of STC templates. Curiously enough, Most of them matched the STC designs with 99% fidelity, bearing battle damage and field repairs. There were still more ways to upgrade them a little, but not as much as I thought. Which also begged the question. How did these guys lost so badly, with such advanced tech? Chaos also cheated though. Anyways, the Grey_Knights_Nemesis_Dread Knight could benefit from a sealed and armored cockpit, and an extra construct void shield like those used by my Moirax Armiger Knights. Which meant a new arc reactor. Oh well. So the equipment they had wasn't perfect. It will be after I was done with it. The Aegis Terminator suits were quite amazing instead, so I kept 5 of the repaired ones for my librarians. Wouldn't be usable by non-psychers anyways, like any other barrier tech. Adding some auramite and blackstone reinforcements to the Grey Knight's armor would also make them more durable. Personal teleporters were the hardest thing to repair though, since displacing through the warp was a delicate business. I let my Forge Masters deal with that, lest I embed an innocent Grey Knight into a ship bulwark by accident. If it came to it, I could do that on purpose. So, you guys have any opinion on the Ishtvanian faction? You know, those fellows in the Inquisition who start internal conflicts and wars to just create a stronger humanity? I killed like 80 of those fuckers, but I was curious what you guys think. I asked the prognosticar while installing a few hex wards onto a Gatling silencer with Cognis targeting systems, which meant it never missed. Amazing stuff and a good technological acquisition for my own Astartes. The Grey Knight snatched the silencer from my hand, and spoke a few low-tone prayers to calm the machine's spirit. Then he turned towards me and leaned closer. We cannot disobey the Holy Inquisition, Perflansfire. Our vows and mental seals prevent us from taking action, he whispered in a pained voice. I guess Alpha Psychers could bend those vows a little. I nodded slowly. I do have a house spire back on Terra. Maybe it's time I receive a different kind of insults and threats, not just from nobles. Maybe those insults could mention the name of a grand personage who will gut me alive for my heresies. Their location as well, maybe? I tested with a curious tone. The prognosticar handed me the nice silencer as a gift. Brother Job would have liked you to have his old weapon, Perflansfire. Maybe visit Necromunda next? Heretics abound in that place. Necromunda, huh? I guess the Halo Crusade fleet needs a place to relax and hunt for sport on the way back to the boring fringe. As for the other thing, in a decade everything will be better. Maybe Lehman Russ will also return at wolf time. I spoke in a cryptic voice. The prognosticar was a great seer, probably just as good at the Eldar ones. He just nodded and walked away, with a hand clenched on his Rosarius. Still not a good guy, but I will take any help I could get. He will also probably grow golden wings and unmake demons with a single word in a decade. Best to have a friend in high places. When the galaxy broke, before I left the strike cruiser Sword of Dione, a limping Grey Knight asked for a private conversation. Quite curious, I know. His name was Grossi_Telemaine with the rank of epistolary, some type of librarian most likely. He didn't carry any pistol, I checked. Is it true, Perflansfire? You managed to subdue and capture the demon Primarch Angron? The not-so-young psyker asked with obvious pain in his voice. His service studs placed him over 600 years in service, not a small feat for someone battling demons with such an obvious handicap. I would have remembered a limping Grey Knight anyways. Psychers could heal themselves quite easily. Were you present at Fenris, back when you wanted to murder the Space Wolves? I asked instead, while examining his leg wound with my other senses. Some kind of black shards were burrowed into his ceramite-infused bones, almost at the limit of my tesseract's tactile range. Tricky things. Sadly, no. I wasn't allowed to join, since my mentor Justicar Elos thought I would rush in and get myself killed by Angron. Maybe it was also true. The Grey Knight answered with a cold voice. Hovering in midair behind him, a cherub named Young_Pius_2014 began to play a flute, some weird tune that grated my ears. I sighed inward and ignored the winged monster. Instead, I held my hand out, using both the tesseract and my breath of gods to grab the black bone fragments into my glove. I hope you don't mind if I keep the shards. I am still training myself to use proper pariah powers, but I can't go around dragging a demon by a leash. People might get strange ideas from that. I mused out loud while crafting a blackstone shell around the shards, to serve me as a warp battery and training tool. The flute of the creepy cherub halted as the Grey Knight stood straight, and tested his leg cautiously. None of the apothecaries managed to remove the damned shards, he whispered in awe. Then you don't mind if I keep them, right? I can barely drain a little from them, but I sense anger and fury from it, plus some martial skills and honor feelings. The last two might be your psychic imprint. I asked again, with the bolter-like casing spinning in my palm. No, I don't mind at all. However, I suspect only the fury is from me. I was rather furious last few centuries, Grossi declared in a nicer voice. Relieved maybe. Right. Angron belonged to Khorne in the past. Khorne would have some honor traits among his warriors. Learning to become a blade master would be useful though. So, what were you asking first? Something about Angron? I remembered a minute later, rather fascinated by my new toy. I think someone should remember quite vividly their heroic fight with a demon Primarch. Are you having fun at my expense? The Grey Knight wondered while casting some biokinetic spell on his leg. I think it was a Tuesday, right? Anyways, Magnus was much harder to capture than silly Angron. I had to kick his red eye out, then we used the Emperor's sword to slice off the demon part. There was Lorga too, but the idiot jumped out of his Gloriana to swipe at me with a sword. Angron was the easiest, to be fair, I recalled in a fond memory. Tuesday? That's what you remember most vividly about that day? The Grey Knight yelled in outrage. Tuesday is the day we have boiled eggs for breakfast. Is my favorite day, I yelled back just as the prognosticar and several lamented tech marines burst into the room, probably worried about our screams. Why are you arguing about boiled eggs? Today is not even Tuesday. My grandson Felix wondered in confusion. Unbelievable. Grossi growled and walked out stomping his feet. Healed feet too, by the way. The prognosticar also noticed the healed foot, then locked his eyes on the black stone case in my hand holding the black shards. Brother Grossi was injured by a fragment of Angron's black blade, and we could never heal him. Until today. I saw that. Anyways, I had an idea. Your brotherhood could use my spire on Terra for training and covert ops. We only have like 20 blank people there, and there's room for a few millions easily. I proposed while flicking the casing up and down, then had the case vanish and appear in my other hand like a magician. You're planning to use us against other nobles who may attack the spire? The prognosticar prognosticated like a pro. So you don't want a safe house on Terra? I countered while flicking the case around and having it return to my hand before it could strike the walls. Felix muttered something like I like scrambled eggs better while turning back to repair more artifacts with his brothers. And in exchange? The Grey Knight seer glared at me with glowing eyes. Training for my librarians perhaps. And maybe aid to Lancefire House trader ships, if and when possible. I proposed in a light voice. The prognosticar closed his eyes, probably tracing a few timelines like his kind were prone to do. In a decade maybe. If the wolf time really comes, your warning will be of great use. I nodded in agreement, then stepped away back on the Forge world. The fabricator was rather anxious to meet me again. The God Walker. Are you able to make more like that, emissary? The tech priest asked in an eager voice. Although I was getting better at using my breath, titans were still hard to do. And big ones much more so. Probably, maybe. It is quite tiring to be honest. My daughter is getting married, so that was a special gift. Glory to the Omnissiah. You should rest well, Lord Lancefire. We'll trade more tomorrow. The fabricator exclaimed and almost urged me to go sleep. So I went back to my ship and slept. with the black case still in my hand. Possibly not my best idea, but I was tired. I did sleep like a baby. When I woke up, the case was empty. No more sword shards, no more skills to absorb. Canis lifted his giant head above me, his eyes glowing golden. "MRRR. Woof," he said very wisely. "Poisoned food? Nah. I haven't eaten for 12 hours. Wait." I held up the case and my wolf nodded in return. My bodyguard rose to his feet, as I shifted through the tesseract into my shower. "Don't run off again, Lord Captain?" he asked in a tired voice. "I need to test my sword skills, Captain Khan. And you're the best blade master around," I explained while taking out a pair of dull swords from my inventory. "That you do, Lord Lancefire. As for best blade master around, there are Custodes and Grey Knights in the system. Some of them 10 times older than me," he added with a humble voice. "Right, Custodes were kinda bullshit by design. And biokinetic psychers like the Grey Knights could accelerate their muscles and reflexes a dozen times too." In a minute, we began sparring at full speed, and I was able to block and parry the good captain far better than before. I even touched his hand once. The White Scar held a hand up to stop the match, and examined his glove. Indeed, there was a faint mark there. Progress. I haven't touched the White Scar even once in a century. "You've become better than most of your lamenters already, except the 9 champions I trained myself. Double your skills again, and you'll be a proper chapter master," the man said in a mild voice. Did I hear praise? Probably not. I should eat more demon weapons and get better. My pariah powers were proving quite useful. If a few shards gave me this kind of skill, an entire weapon would be better. Right? The next day, I proceeded to give Forge Riser their gift, a pair of smaller Titan models of the Lancefire J pattern, now called Castigator B pattern, with the Titan's head tucked inside the armor like the Terminator dreadnoughts. They were still 8 kilometers tall, with the head and bridge reaching 7 kilometers in height, which was a decent altitude to serve as a battlefield command center. However, beside the obvious protection from side fire, the cowl of the Titan served another purpose. A void shield screen could be deployed in front of the Titan's head, both for battlefield protection and space navigation. A pair of Macarius engines allowed the new Titan to travel towards other star systems, with the engine vector nozzles coming out of a giant power pack on the Titan's back. Was it absurd? Was it too big and a waste of resources? Of course. Did I care? You guessed right. I cared not a single bit. The 2 Titans were rapidly named the Twin Pillars, mostly because I named them Pillar of Autumn and Pillar of Winter. They shall hold sky for your forge, fabricator, like the pillars of Heracles from our history. I hope you don't mind I nominated 2 of my daughters as their princeps. Better make sure a blank has command of the mighty god engine, I said as the fabricator and I stood on the forge's spire and eye to eye with the giant walkers. They are smaller than your wedding gift, but we also get 2 of them. They shall be our pride and joy, autumn and winter. The fabricator mused in a deep voice, his optic lenses still locked on the tall window with the amazing view. And they also have 40 plasma mortars to bombard any infantry around the legs. The Wii field generator can be configured for flare and iron shield modes, or both. And you also got the power fist to cover the barrel of the plasma annihilator unless it's firing. Though I doubt they'll ever need to punch something. I added as the fabricator turned around, a single tear dripping for his last human eye. It is true, Lord Lancefire, I would have preferred a pair of experienced princeps from our own Titan Legion, but blank pilots are even more valuable. Especially since they will have to double as ship captains if we deploy to another world. The tech priest answered while storing the tear into a vial like it was a precious relic. Aren't you bothered by the weakness of your flesh? I asked, quite curious. It is my first ever tear of joy, emissary. I shall treasure it for all time, and remember your deed from it. Now, you said there was something more? The fabricator asked in a serious voice, once the tear vanished under his robes in a small stasis box. We'll displace onto the singularity now, fabricator. I will need the gravity gun for my next miracle. I explained and moved us to the bridge of my battleship. People on the bridge just nodded at me and went back to their posts, while Canis sniffed at my well-oiled armor again. What can I do? Tech priests love their aromatic oils. Right, so a bit of old knowledge first. Inside of any star, there is a core of metal, created by the fusion process of that star. For a sun like this one you have here, the metal core would be 1,000 times larger than your forge world. Our wise ancestors could mine this metal, using large particle excavators, which is how Forge Metallica got their metal planet. I began to speak, and at the same time dumping a part of the metal inventory I got from the galactic core. Not too much, and mostly iron and nickel, but also other elements useful to any forge world. Once the dump phase was complete, the blade fired our void claw towards the clump of minerals, inserting a singularity with the exact precision expected from an advanced AI. The metal began to gather and fall into the new gravity well, forming a perfectly spherical planet. Then the blade fired our lances at an angle, sending the new world on an orbit around the sun, and spinning gently as the metal evaporated into hot volcans spewing molten lava. Orbit achieved with 99.89% accuracy, Captain. Orbital decay will send the new planet into the sun in 1,000,000 years or less. Should I continue firing? The blade asked in a worried voice. I'd say Forge Riser will mine out this planet long before it falls into the sun. Humanity itself was dropping from trees 1,000,000 years ago. I answered just as the blade fired once more. I don't like doing a crap work, Captain. There, 60 million years until orbit decays. The AI said in a satisfied tone. I sighed inward. Damn Necrons were going to sleep 60 million years ago. I wasn't used to the timescale of this place even now. The fabricator ran to the nearest console to check the Auspex sensors. There is enough metal here for 1,000,000,000,000 battleships. We will only need to import rare minerals from other mining worlds. The man calculated it at high speed. That was the point of this demonstration, fabricator. Humanity needs ships and vehicles to rule the galaxy. Now go home and start mining. I encouraged the tech priest and sent him home. The blade hologram appeared at my side, while I was sending mental orders for the Halo fleet to form up for void travel. You are showing the Imperium too much of your power, Lord Captain. Your astrophysics knowledge was not quite right, but still better than what these tech priests know. The AI admonished me in a gentle tone. I raised a finger, then let it drop. What little science I knew from my high school and internet lessons was far below what an AI from the 25th millennium knew. Anyways, that's exactly why a ruler needed to have smart advisors in various fields. I only had to have a vision, and have other people work for it. I'll be in my bedroom now. My fucking duty never ends. I muttered and walked away, as my daughter Jennifer ran to jump in the command throne. Father is such a badass. I heard 2 of my Astartes sons gossip as I left the bridge. Extra sword training, I yelled while pointing 2 fingers at them. Yes, sire. They both answered in a mirthful voice. People weren't supposed to be happy when punished. Damn idiots. Lady Valaine waited for me in the bedroom, while Captain Khan was already inspecting the future concubines in the antechamber. Alaric and Semnai stood silent, and nodded at me without entering. Ah, this was going to be one of those talks. Husband, my dear. We're changing course towards Hive World Necromunda? Is there something important there? My other Inquisitor wife asked while dropping her towel to entice me to talk. Maybe an STC. Maybe something else. But anyways, a lot of killing to be done. I answered as my battleplate and underarmor vanished in my inventory. Delightful. Tell me more. She whispered as her tongue began to tease me expertly. I steeled my mind, and endured her vicious interrogation without giving away anything. For an entire minute. A new record. I suspected something like that. You're lucky with your smarter wives, Pef Lancefire. These people have high connections. The kind to excommunicate your house or virus bomb your worlds, maybe both. Clean up the underhives and search for that STC fragment, but leave the Inquisition to me. This will require a subtle touch, Verlaine whispered as she climbed on top of me and began riding. Well, I was a lucky guy. Plus, we will enter the range of the Pharos soon. My Catan friend would be keeping an eye out for things like that. Any Imperial Hive world is a mess. A failure of humanity and civilization at best, and a giant slaughterhouse of carnage and misery most of times. Necromuda had all this and made it worse, with thousands of hive cities competing for the worst place to live in the galaxy. Sure, the upper spires where the nobility and administratum scribes lived were fancy and clean, but it went bad rapidly as you reached the harp blocks and the macrofactoriums that produced consumer goods, corpse starch and other useful items. The underhives going kilometers deep underground were war zones contested among gangs, cultists, mutants and genestealers, with the sole exception being the planet's capital or hive primus. Here, the underhives were dead silent, and completely empty. Then I remembered I did send Primarch Khan here some time ago, on a quest to find the Van Saar STC. What a shit world, Lord Lancefire. I reached 1,000 kills in my first day, last time I was here with my Primarch. Captain Khan spoke as the holoscreen lit up with familiar noble sigils attempting to impose their pitiful rules on my crusade fleet. Necromunda sure looked like a great live training field for my Astartes and Tech Marines, almost like a planet-sized space hulk infested with all manner of disposable critters. Sure, some manner of polite words will be needed with the current planetary governor, but that was still only a polite gesture. I didn't need the agreement of the local authorities. Lady Verlaine sighed instead, while her hand clenched hard on the null staff. At least 14 inquisitors are present, plus 100 more lower ranks like interrogators and throne agents. Half of them are suspected Ishtvanians. She revealed in a tired voice. I continued my own search, locating Hive Secundus now overwhelmed by tyrannid genestealers and quarantined by penal battalions. A group of separate hive cities formed a cluster called the Skull, now overrun by orcs. Hive Arcos was inhabited only by a chaos cult, and also quarantined. There was also a giant crater where the Cinderak_city was located, home to a good deal of Ironhead squat prospectors, another splinter of the Votan Leagues disguised as regular abhumans. I should displace the squats first, and find out what they knew. My librarians should be able to obtain their cooperation. My mind expanded for a second, and the short clone skeins vanished from the entire star system, now trapped in my Tesseract labyrinth. This included their wheeled vehicles, the land trains and their hidden Votan core buried in a crashed spaceship that produced the very crater that they were based at. Valérien glanced at me with a frown, then sighed again. Alaric and Semnai, we're going down to the governor's spire. And you dear husband, underhives only, for now, she declared in a confident voice, then teleported with her Deathwatch escorts. Assuming command over the Thalax legions. Let's start with Hive Arcos and the Corpse Grinder cult. Spartan spoke from his hidden command center aboard the Black Lament. Almost 2 million power-armored clone-skein cyborgs got displaced on the surface levels of Hive Arcos, and began killing everything in sight, while a single vigil of Silent Sisters followed them in their silent dreadnoughts. Among the Lorica suit cyborgs there were also 40,000 blank pilots who got injured during the Crusade and received a new lease on life as super soldier cyborgs wearing Terminator-grade power armor. Quite useful when dealing with lesser Deimos and rogue psychers, while the local Lord of Skin and Sinew will be handled by our stronger pariah sisters. The regular auxiliary regiments got the far easier task of engaging the orcs infesting the Skull complex, where their tanks and sentinels could provide excessive levels of fire support, and the air force of bombers and ground assault drones will be able to bomb the orcs as they rushed out for a proper fight. The new sentinels with Solex las cannons and plasma mortars performed admirably, but we still lacked enough numbers of those expensive walkers. My house knights added their new neutron lasers when orcs and stompers dared to rush out from the hives, proving rather overkill in most cases. Black-painted orc walkers still needed 2 or 3 hits, because why not? Surely, painting your mech black provided the equivalent of a foot of adamantium armor, right? As always, the Astartes got the worst job, and were sent to engage the Genestealers of the Cult of the Second Sun in Hive Secundus, starting from the top spires and working their way down towards the spawning pools in the Underhive. The Primaris Marines with the Khan gene seed were especially effective in melee combat with the Genestealers, while the Tech Marines and their Guardian Walkers provided fire support. The extra etheric detectors provided by the Zathshard before he left were proving extremely useful now, with every Astartes captain and lieutenant equipped with one, as well as some recon squads and Void Masters in charge of the umbilicals and supply locks for our spaceships. To my surprise, Primarch Khan had failed to locate the real STC of House Van Saar, despite cleaning Hive Primus underhives and all the connecting tunnels. I could see the underhive filled with shattered walls and exploded vaults, machine shops and heretic factoriums despoiled of machine tools and nerve-stapled servitors. Obviously a great deal of machinery was extracted from the place, but not the STC constructor. The thing was hanging like a ripe fruit under the main starport, disguised as a regular fusion generator, no doubt due to its constant radiation leaks. Right now, various archaeotechs of the Van Saar were still hard at work inside the STC, scanning and editing STC templates in a familiar manner. Maybe even more competent than my own edit method, since I wasn't an experienced STC technician with thousands of years of code programming and subtle power adjustments. Ever better, while the STC was damaged and leaked radiation, it was also not locked or restricted to a single type of machine like most STCs I've seen till now. Everything from weapons, suits and implants, as well as anti-grav platforms like the Grav Cutter and the larger Grav Cruiser which were used as troop and supply transports. Yoink! The starport left a groan of ease and respite as the hanging fruit vanished in my tesseract, alongside the precious archaeotechs and their invaluable expertise. These were not the same kind of religious tech experts as the normal tech priests of the Mechonicus, so I could use them for my own gain once back in the Lancefire domain. Not to be a scum thief, I began repairing and rearranging the system with metal asteroids and ice comets getting moved in separate Lagrange points for ease of exploitation, as well as allowing my breath to clean up the toxic air and seas, and upgrade the Eye of Selene space station into a proper defense fort with extra adamantium armor and void shields. It took 2 weeks for the minefields and asteroid fort line to become operational and integrated with the governor's military force, while Lady Valane undertook her own investigation. It was mostly her alpha psyker powers and forced confessions, to be fair. As we departed from the Hive world, a strike cruiser of the Imperial Fists departed towards Terra carrying the corpses of 8 Inquisitors declared traitors by my wife, and 88 of their acolytes as well, with blood-signed confessions and other forms of evidence attached, like notebooks and ship logs. While the Hive world was still a bloody mess, nobody could fix that. I could steal 100 billion young girls for my own eugenic program in the Fringe, mostly as salt wives for the Katakan soldiers and colonists. It didn't even matter, as an universe mass conveyor had arrived from Terra with 1 trillion immigrants stored in stasis to replace the local casualties and repopulate the lost Hive cities. There were still about 400 trillion humans living on Necromunda, so another trillion was only a drop in the bucket. I was thinking about grabbing the nice conveyor for myself, when a message with the Emperor's house codes arrived directly on my implant. Omnissiah's judgment has found ye not guilty. But do make sure the 85 transport ships return. The exodus must continue. The blade traced the message to the bridge of the mass conveyor, where an Auramite warrior was just mag-locking his phone-sized transponder to his belt. The Custodes' eyes turned golden and he turned to look right at me, despite the large distance and no method of detecting my tesseract sense. Damn bullshit, Emperor. I wanted to go home already,